Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. One thing some of my viewers may have noticed was this week was a bit dry in terms of video output. This was strictly due to day job work schedule, and I should be reaching an equilibrium again come Monday or Tuesday. Rest assured, I do still fully plan on tackling some of the recent topics within the video game industry, such as accessibility versus easy mode and the ever-present issues and misconceptions of politics in video games and what that actually means. Also, I've switched my primary funding site to Ko-Fi or Coffee or whatever, so if you enjoy these videos and feel like supporting the channel that way, head on over to Ko-Fi or Coffee or whatever.com/SidAlpha and buy me a coffee or Ko-Fi or something. Also, while I may have lost the race against Big Fry TV to be the first of us to reach 100,000 subscribers, my congratulations to Big Fry, my march towards 100K continues, and I now have less than 2 months to reach that goal on or before my birthday, which is on June 9th. So anything anyone would be willing to do to help me achieve that goal would be very much appreciated. But let's get to why we're all really here. Star Wars. Now, there aren't enough facts here for me to give a true breakdown, and this video is intended to be more fully of an opinion piece as opposed to the normal 50-50. The reason for that this time is that we only have a couple of facts to go off of. The first is that yesterday, during Lucasfilm's The Star Wars show, Respawn Entertainment's CEO Vince Zampella stated in regards to their upcoming release of Jedi Fallen Order, quote, "It's a single-player story with no multiplayer and no microtransactions. It's a story game." This was also confirmed by EA Star Wars on Twitter. And then today at around 11:30 a.m. my time, the reveal trailer dropped, and that has been what's on your screen now. The release trailer features no gameplay, but it does give us a brief overview of the core concept of the story, which seems to be a very young Jedi that escaped Order 66 and has been living in hiding. Now, in the Star Wars canon, Darth Vader spent years hunting down and eradicating Jedi that had gone into hiding across the galaxy, as Order 66 was by no means a complete purge, nor was it expected to be. Still, even though he did hunt down a great many Jedi, some of them still did manage to escape his grasp. And while I think it would be a lot more fun, at least for me, to just sit here and spout known lore for several minutes, now I'm here discussing this particular information because I was asked by multiple people on Twitter what my thoughts were surrounding the announcement of no microtransactions and a single-player game without a multiplayer option. And my first knee-jerk reaction was a line from the late, great Captain James T. Kirk.
"Don't believe them. Don't trust them. They are dying. Let them die."
And yes, I know that's the space opera equivalent of the Ghostbusters crossing the streams, but I love them both, so I don't care. But when I thought about it a bit more, I realized that we might actually be able to believe this one, and I'll tell you why. First, we know that Electronic Arts, or rather all publicly traded games publishers, have become greed incarnate due to their omnipresent need to fill the coffers of the shareholders, often sacrificing much within their games until they're refined down to the point of being the epitomization of the video game Skinner box through clearly mandated formulaic design structures that result in video games that are ultimately exceptional mediocrity. Pretty, with good sound, but ultimately shallow and hollow. They're the fishing shows of the video game world. Games that are designed to engage as opposed to entertain, doing their best to manipulate players into emptying their wallets on digital and infinitely replicatable goods through a variety of different means and methods. Electronic Arts tried that sort of Skinner box mentality with Star Wars Battlefront EA and Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA, with Battlefront 2 EA being initially released as a completely pay-to-win slot machine gambling game. And what happened there was, as many are aware, a massive fallout that resulted in an apology, the now oft-memed Pride and Accomplishment Reddit post, which quickly became the most downvoted Reddit post in history, and a complete reworking and rebalancing of the game to remove the pay-to-win mechanics, which resulted in the absolute hollowness and completely shallow game design implemented by DICE, following the Battlefield formula being shown for precisely what it was, a bad game. The resultant backlash got Disney involved, and EA promised to do better in the future, only to later cancel the open-world Star Wars game that was in development by EA's Vancouver office. That project was picked up by the Vancouver office after Electronic Arts shut down Visceral Games back in 2017. The reason EA gave was your typical PR BS that, once you stripped all the useless language away, boiled down to the game not fitting their current projections for market trends, or to put in simpler terms, it didn't fit EA's live services model for cheap, infinitely repeatable monetization. Which is a bit odd that they would do that now, yet they're more than willing to allow Respawn Entertainment to create a single-player-only, narrative-driven game without a multiplayer aspect and without microtransactions, or so they claim. And the reason why I'm pointing all of this out is because there are a few main reasons why I think that Respawn, at least, are in earnest with this assertion. First, what we can take from this is that there are currently no microtransactions and none planned for the game, which is a good sign. Is it a sign that EA learned their lesson? Well, considering how they keep their FIFA Ultimate Team extreme monetization and gambling mechanics firmly in place and had fought against Belgium's legal ruling that such practices were indeed gambling, along with a billion other reasons, no, EA has not learned their lesson in the slightest. However, Star Wars Battlefront EA did not do well. Star Wars Battlefront 2 EA also did not do at all well. EA scrapped another Star Wars game entirely and ended up catching a bunch of flack from the House of Mouse. They paid a large amount of money to acquire the rights to develop and publish Star Wars video games, and over the past several years have done absolutely nothing of note with the Star Wars franchise. Now, if it's one thing we can expect from publicly traded corporations is that they are mandated to see a significant return on investment, something that they have not managed to accomplish to date. This is likely being allowed through merely on the basis that if EA tried the same thing that they tried with Battlefront 2, the Star Wars fans would revolt yet again, except even louder, more numerous, and for far longer. From a cost-benefit standpoint, that is something EA would wish to avoid. So will we see microtransactions in the game? Are they lying? Well, remember that the developers could be speaking the honest-to-God truth as they are currently aware, but then they could be handed down a mandate from the publishers mere weeks before launch or even a period of time after launch. I said on Twitter, I'll believe it won't have microtransactions if a year goes by. There is one thing that baffles me about all of this, however, is the fact that people are actually praising Electronic Arts over this decision to not include microtransactions or force live services nonsense down everyone's throats. That's like being grateful to the person that spent the past decade slapping you in the face for then suddenly deciding to give it a rest for a few minutes. No, they don't deserve your praise over this, not at all. That has been a disturbing trend in video games, where games companies get lauded over supposedly pro-consumer behavior when they had spent years ramming microtransactions, day one DLC, loot boxes, and pay-to-win mechanics into every single video game they could get their grubby little mitts on. They should not at all be praised for doing something that they should have been doing all along. I refuse to thank the person who's been slapping the face of gamers for years and hold them up as some sort of paragon of virtue merely for deciding not to slap me in my face for a little bit. That's not how that works. EA is still scum, and their word cannot be trusted. However, in this instance, with so much on the line with the Star Wars franchise, I'm willing to admit that they're most likely being truthful for a change. And because I know that there will be at least a few people that will be curious, let me tell you what I think about the new Respawn Star Wars game. Now, frankly, we don't have enough information to go off of at this point, but if EA can keep their greedy little claws out of the game for a change, it stands a high likelihood that we might finally get a good Star Wars game for the first time in I don't know how many decades. I saw the storytelling capabilities of Respawn through a very small window with Titanfall 2. A game that had a short but compelling single-player campaign that left me wishing I could get a full-on single-player Titanfall game that would allow me to explore the lore and the characters within the world, because it was interesting. I know they have the capabilities to write a compelling story with compelling characters, which is absolutely paramount when you're dealing with a single-player game, especially a Star Wars game where the characters and the world are going to demand a larger focus for the developers. Now, we've had a true drought of anything good with Star Wars over the past years. Now, I tend to get a mixed response on social media on this, but I'll state in the open that the new movies are nothing but a giant steaming grumpy sitting right there in the middle of the living room floor, where Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson insult and berate you if you dare to point out that the big steaming pile of fecal matter is a giant steaming pile of fecal matter. The recent Star Wars video games from Electronic Arts have been exceptionally subpar in nature, focusing far more on corporate greed than actual gameplay and storytelling. You see, it's a tricky prospect to delve into the Star Wars lore because there is so much of it. Now, up until the sequels came along, I'd seen the prequels dozens of times, the originals hundreds apiece. I not only had read each and every novel within the expanded universe, I owned them all, either in hardback, paperback, or both. I'd also played every single Star Wars video game ever created. Now, there is so much lore out there that it can be a daunting task, and it's no small wonder that people like Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson were completely incapable of getting it right. But at the same time, the vast majority of the lore surrounded the main cast of characters and a few circles of extension. Once you stepped outside of that, most of the lore is very easy to comprehend and follow, and the world of Star Wars is a big place. It's a literal galaxy. The capabilities for meaningful stories that allow the player to be able to immerse themselves in the world of Star Wars truly borders on the infinite. It is a world that I loved growing up, and I still do today, at least I love what Star Wars was, not the broken, lore-breaking, identity politics-driven mess that it is now. Basically, what I'm getting at here is Respawn is one of the few companies out there that I think are likely capable of pulling off a decent Star Wars game that we can all enjoy that doesn't engage in any of the nonsense we've seen in recent memory. Even though it's Electronic Arts, I still hope for a good Star Wars game and story experience. It is something that we've been missing for a very, very long time. Now, thank you so much for listening to me ramble on. I think that's all I have to say on this topic. Please do remember to like and share if you did. And also don't forget to subscribe and also ring the bell so you don't end up missing a video. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.